You might stroll through a park and barely register the ground underfoot, or
Yeah.
the bench you sit on for a minute.
Right, just part of the background.
Exactly. But what if even those seemingly ordinary things are actually, well, intricate works of art and engineering, brimming with history, culture, and some really innovative thinking?
Hmm.
For those of you listening who want to gain knowledge, efficiently and thoroughly, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Those aha moments without feeling overwhelmed.
Precisely. We often focus on the grand scale, don't we? The big landscape architecture vision.
Yeah, the overall picture.
But in this deep dive, we're zooming right in. We're exploring the fascinating world of European landscape architecture details.
Looking beyond the perfect hedges, then.
Yeah, exactly. To the often overlooked features that really bring these spaces alive. And they reveal surprisingly deep cultural and historical stories.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our source for this is excerpts from the book European Landscape Architecture, Best Practice in Detailing. And this isn't just like a pretty coffee table book. It's a collection of case studies from all over Europe. And they really dig into the reasons behind the design of these smaller elements.
So the why, not just the what.
Exactly. We're getting insights straight from leading professionals and academics, the people who actually thought up and built these details.
And our mission here is basically to pull out the key insights into how these landscape architects make those critical decisions.
Right.
We'll look at their choices about materials, construction methods, how these details may be evolved differently across Europe.
So think of it as your shortcut to understanding those often subtle but really significant nuances of landscape design across the continent.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So let's get right into it. The book starts by making a pretty compelling point. Landscape detail isn't just practical stuff. It's an inventive, subtle, robust art form.
An art form in itself.
Yeah, it's the essential step that turns that big design vision into something tangible, something real.
And what's fascinating here is the emphasis on advancing the craft of landscape detail. The authors argue that really paying attention to this aspect is, well, fundamental to good contemporary landscape design.
It's not just an afterthought.
Not at all. It's key to the quality, the longevity of these spaces.
And it's not just about how things look, is it? The book really hammers home the thought process behind these details.
Right.
We're talking about why a specific material got picked over another. And importantly, when these detailed decisions happened in the design process, was it planned right from the start, or did it kind of evolve?
That brings up an important point about the value of these case studies. The book suggests they're incredibly valuable for professional learning.
How so?
Well, they offer real-world examples for teaching problem solving, for developing ways to evaluate how effective a design is. It's learning by seeing how others tackled similar challenges.
Right, like learning from the best, basically.
Yeah. And it's not just for students either. The book argues these case studies help build up a body of critical thinking, of theory, within the profession itself.
A way to understand what works, what doesn't, and maybe why.
Exactly. And connecting this to the bigger picture, the introduction makes a really vital point. To truly appreciate landscape architecture, we need to understand the context of how it was created.
Okay.
It's not just about admiring a beautiful space, it's recognizing it as both, an artistic expression and a social product, shaped by specific times, needs, the intentions of particular people.
Okay, keeping that in mind, let's jump into our first case study. Harbor Park in Copenhagen, Denmark.
All right. Denmark.
Now, Denmark has this century-long tradition of really strong landscape architecture. It started, focused on private gardens, but after World War II, it expanded into all sorts of public projects.
And there's a history there of functional sort of geometrical forms and a real emphasis on excellent technical execution. Really well-made stuff.
Yeah. But what's interesting about Harbor Park, the book says, is that while it keeps that technical excellence, it also reflects a shift towards a more relaxed, urban, outdoor life, something we've seen in other European cities, too.
Oh, so a blend of that strong tradition with maybe a more contemporary feel.
Exactly. Now, here's an interesting twist. The park's creation wasn't just a top-down city thing.
Oh.
The residents of the Islands Brigg neighborhood, they'd actually been in conflict with the city authorities over redevelopment plans for years.
Right, that happens.
But there was a turning point. And eventually, everyone agreed a park was the right way to go for this site. Partly because of a new generation in the city's parks office, but also seeing successful harborside projects elsewhere.
And the role of the local community sounds really significant here.
It was huge. Back in 1984, hundreds of residents actually went out and laid out a temporary park themselves on the harbor side,
Right.
just to show what they wanted.
Wow, direct action.
Yeah. And it got a lot of public attention and became really popular. So popular, it became clear the city needed to step up and provide real support.
So the people led the way.
Pretty much. And in 1993, the municipality agreed to fund it permanently. Consultants Paul Jensen and landscape architect Annalise Bramsness came up with this plan for what they called a recycled park.
A recycled park. What does that mean exactly?
One that would communicate the place, its history, and the present time. The goal was to create this unified space, organic shapes, but still feeling connected to the rest of the city.
Okay, that recycled idea sounds key. How does it show up in the details?
Well, let's start with the waterfront promenade. It's paved with the original granite sets the cobblestone.
Keeping the old stuff.
Yeah, and they even kept sections of the old railway lines that ran there. They did add some granite slabs, Holland gneiss, apparently the same material used a century ago, just to make it more accessible.
So reinforcing that connection to the city's material history.
Exactly. What insight does that give you?
Well, it's that deliberate decision, isn't it? To keep the dockside character, reuse materials,
Yeah.
even if they're a bit uneven.
Right.
It wasn't just about saving money, I suspect. It reflects that growing trend in urban design across Europe that really values the history, the memory embedded in existing materials.
Gives it that unique sense of place.
For sure. Something a completely new design might lack. They even initially kept the old railway sleepers, apparently, though those had to be replaced later.
Then you've got Vestmanaplatz, the skate park. This was an interesting evolution too, wasn't it?
Yeah, the book mentions the initial park plan didn't really have a dedicated skate space.
But skateboarding got really popular.
So they adapted. They actually consulted with local skaters to design the rink. It's offset, made of steel, next to a lower asphalt basketball area with concrete edging.
So it highlights adapting the design to what the community actually needs as things change.
Exactly. And again, you see that attention to detail in the concrete elements, forming steps and ramps around the basketball area. Real thought went into it.
And let's not forget the flower beds. These are raised beds, and they have this really distinctive blue ceramic facing.
Oh, interesting. Colorful.
Yeah. And they carefully picked plants for shelter and visual interest. A mix of trees, climbers, flowering shrubs. It's a thoughtful combo of looks and function.
Okay, moving through the park. The festival place. This area sounds unique.
It really is. It's defined by the inverted hull of an old ferry, the pinnon.
An actual ferry hull.
Yeah. Sitting on timber supports creates this amazing shelter. The ground underneath is gravel, and then there are these eye-catching zigzag steps.
Zigzag steps. Made of what?
Precast concrete curbstones. They sound quite distinctive.
They do.
And they even managed to work in a gentle ramp for accessibility alongside them.
Clever.
The northern side of this festival place has a steel pergola covered in clematis. And keeping with that recycled theme, they used concrete from the old harbor storage area to make benches.
More reuse.
Yeah, topped with those same blue ceramic flags we saw in the flower beds. They even repurposed an old wall to support barbecue grills, and they added insulation so wheelchair users could get close, a really thoughtful touch.
That is thoughtful and shows attention to different users. What about Halfdan's Passage?
Right, in that section, they kept this massive industrial concrete wall, but they softened it with wisteria growing on it.
Nice contrast.
The paving there is in situ concrete slabs, and there are sunken pitches for volleyball and pétanque. And the lighting in this area, apparently inspired by Barcelona, sounds particularly striking.
So again, honoring the industrial past, adding new recreation, and looking elsewhere for successful design ideas.
Yeah.
That wall, the book says, it used to support a crane.
That's right. So keeping it really tells a story.
Definitely.
Finally, the lawns. These were actually raised. Originally, it was to seal polluted soil underneath.
Practical reason.
But then they increased the height later to create informal seating and also just to protect the grass from getting worn out by people walking across it.
Makes sense. And the edging.
They used soft-colored concrete edging with specially designed corner pieces for a really clean finish.
So the overall concept of Harbor Park really comes through in these details, doesn't it? The reuse of materials, the openness, preserving history while reflecting contemporary life, adding new paths, modern lighting, often influenced by what the locals wanted.
It's a fascinating blend of past and present. Okay, next up, let's head over to Ireland. 2 projects in Dublin, Smithfield and GPO Plaza.
Right, Dublin.
Smithfield first. This was a big millennium redevelopment project. It's in a historically working class area, and the aim was to improve how it looked visually while keeping its old functions and hopefully kickstarting some regeneration.
And it had a decent budget, 4.4 million, and picked up some awards.
Yes, so key design elements in Smithfield.
Well, the lighting columns are probably the most iconic thing. Big columns topped with braziers. They really make a statement, give the place a recognizable feature on the skyline.
Right, you'd know where you were.
Yeah.
What about the ground, the
Yeah.
paving?
The paving's interesting. They recycled as much of the existing basalt and granite sets as they could. Good reuse again. But for better accessibility, they brought in smoother granite slabs. Though the designer apparently wanted even larger ones originally.
Oh, budget constraints maybe?
Could be. The carriageway uses a lighter granite, sourced from China, apparently, and the whole design has this distinctive 45-degree angle running through it, which creates some interesting visual lines.
And the street furniture, bollards and things.
They went for non-standard stainless steel bollards with this angled detail. Kind of cool,
What?
but vehicle collisions. Seems to be a recurring issue in urban design, doesn't it?
Ah, yes. Things get bumped.
So some of the fancy angled ones had to be replaced with standard round ones, which is a shame. You lose that unique detail.
Yeah.
It really highlights that common challenge, doesn't it?
Right.
Balancing the aesthetic vision with the practicalities of everyday use, potential damage. Designers have to think about durability right from the start.
It sounds like the reality of managing a public space sometimes bumps up against that original design vision. Were there other challenges there?
Yeah, a few. The development of the Lewis tram line impacted the southern part of the site later on.
Okay.
And apparently, the management and replacement policies haven't always stuck to the original design details, which has kind of diluted the overall impact a bit over time.
Right. Things get replaced with whatever's standard or cheapest.
Exactly. And a familiar story, perhaps, lack of cleaning has apparently affected the intended contrast between the different paving colors.
Ah, maintenance. It's always key, isn't it? It's a reminder that the long-term success isn't just about the initial build, but that ongoing care. Okay, let's shift focus to GPO Plaza. O'Connell Street, another really historically significant spot in Dublin, part of a bigger plan for the area.
Right. And paving is a key feature here, too. Bands of pink and gray granite running across both the pavements and the roads.
Okay, creating a visual link.
Yeah. They also have tree pits with sunken light fittings. And these things they call spot stones adds to the visual texture.
Spot stones. Sounds intriguing. What are they?
The book doesn't go into huge detail, but they contribute to the pattern. However, there were some compromises needed on surface levels.
Why was that?
Well, highway engineering requirements. They needed to keep curbs along bus routes, but also wanted level pedestrian access elsewhere.
Tricky balance.
Yeah. It resulted in varying curb heights. And even though they were marked by the different colored paving bands, the book notes they were observed to be a bit of a trip hazard in some places.
Oof. Safety's always number one in public spaces. What about the planting in GPO Plaza?
They used pleach trees, where the branches are trained to form a kind of screen.
Yes, very formal looking.
Exactly. To emphasize the pedestrian space. It's an interesting technique, quite architectural. The book notes is maybe a bit unusual in this specific context.
It's fascinating seeing how different places tackle similar problems: pedestrians, traffic, accessibility.
It is. And the Dublin examples really highlight that interplay, don't they, between ambitious design concepts and the practical realities of getting things built and keeping them maintained long term.
Okay, let's cross the channel to France now. A very different kind of project. The Bay of Somme motorway service station.
Ah, a service station. Not usually top of the list for landscape design showcases.
Well, this one came out of a design competition common in France. And the goal was really ambitious: integrate the service station seamlessly into the surrounding Somme landscape, make the motorway feel distant.
Okay, that's a challenge. So what was the design philosophy?
It's all about blending in. Blending with the huge open fields, the landscapes of the Bay of Somme Delta, the plateau of Picardy, incorporating things like canals and wetlands from the local area.
So the landscape architects, HYO, really focus on continuity with the natural environment, a strong ecological design approach, trying to minimize the infrastructure's impact.
Exactly. And it wasn't just planting. It involved some pretty major earthworks, right?
Absolutely. They moved over 200,000 cubic meters of earth left over from the motorway construction itself to basically sculpt this new landscape. Covered the site with a thick layer of soil.
Wow.
That earth moving was crucial for shaping the land, creating those visual links to the fields beyond.
And the way they handled rainwater sounds like it was a key part of the design, too.
It was, yeah. HYL often uses rainwater management as like a structuring element in their work. And
Mhm.
here, the need to deal with runoff became central to the whole site concept.
So what about the specific details around the service building itself?
Well, the area right around the building uses a variety of surfaces. You've got béton désactivé that's concrete with the aggregate exposed.
Ah, textured concrete.
Right. Plus gravel, timber decking, stabilized sand, different textures underfoot. The building itself has concrete walls, but with local stones inlaid into them.
Connecting it to the region.
Yeah. And hedges, hornbeam, and roses divide up the different areas. And there's a grid of Fraxinus velutina trees that kind of extends the rhythm of the building's pillars out into the landscape.
Nice touch. And the park landscape beyond the building, that's where the philosophy really comes through.
That's where you really see it. There's a pond representing the local wetlands, 3 canals evoking the polders, a picnic area tucked into protective slopes.
Sounds peaceful.
A timber-decked path winds through it all, leading to these light-looking bridges over the canals. HYL even designed the picnic tables and terraces themselves, a very comprehensive approach.
It sounds like they really thought about the experience of being in the park.
They did. And they used a hidden ha-ha fence, a sunken ditch.
Right, so it doesn't block the view.
Exactly. It acts as a visual barrier, but also doubles as a basin to manage heavy rainfall. Clever. Combines looks and function. They even designed the pond edges to be shallow, so they didn't need safety fences.
Smart. And the canals, how do they work? Water supply.
In dry seasons, they get water from the pond near the service building. And each canal has its own infiltration pond designed to handle stormwater, even really heavy downpours.
What's really striking about this French example the book notes is the design integrity. Apparently, the final built project changed very little from the initial competition idea.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's a testament to HYL doing really detailed work right at the start and collaborating closely with the architect from day one.
Shows how a strong, well-developed initial concept can really hold up through the whole process.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move over to Germany. 2 interconnected projects in Munich, the landscape park and the new cemetery.
Ah, Riem. Built on the old airport site.
That's the one. The landscape park is part of this new city quarter, and it's based on an ecological concept, living and working among greeneries. It's huge, 210 hectares, and it hosted the National Garden exhibition, the Bundesgartenschau, back in 2005.
Right. That ecological concept was central. They looked at existing site elements, picked plants based on potential natural vegetation for the area.
And the planting itself had a specific approach.
Yes, the concept by Vexlard used these consistent grids for trees and shrubs, aiming for varied transparency and depth. Vexlard used principles like homogeneous plantings, same types together in regular patterns for a formal look, and heterogeneous plantings, mixed types, more irregular, mimicking wilder areas.
Interesting. And specific features, like the promenade along the lake?
Yeah, that use prefabricated concrete elements and granite paving, and the terrace walls are really notable detail.
How so?
It's relatively low, but quite wide, doubled in width, actually, clad in natural stone. It was designed to be really flexible. You could use it as a walkway, a bench, or just a sunny terrace to sit on.
Very adaptable. You mentioned the park integrated the National Garden exhibition. How did that fit in?
Rainer Schmidt won the design competition for the exhibition part. His design was inspired by microscopic plant images, apparently,
Wow.
and it was designed to harmonize with Vexlard's existing park structure. Some of the exhibition elements, like the sunken garden and parallel garden, were kept as permanent features, adding another layer to the park.
Okay. Now, the new cemetery in Riem. This was an extension designed as a contemporary landscape park cemetery, but also incorporating traditional village cemetery ideas.
Yes, the design by Axel Laurer and Ursula Hochrein is really quite striking. A key element is the elevated grave islands,
Why elevated?
high water table on the site. So they raised the burial areas and enclosed them with these dry laid, nice stone walls, and the slopes leading up to them are planted berms designed to flower.
Grave Islands. That's a very evocative name. What
Yeah.
about the other built parts?
The funeral hall sits between the old and new cemeteries, acting as a connector. It has a very strict, almost monastic feel. And the use of nice stone is incredibly consistent throughout.
How so?
It's in the layered masonry walls, the polygonal paving stones, even the stairs. Then they used Corten steel for the gates and poured concrete for some inner walls in the bell tower. A very controlled palette.
The pathways sound carefully considered, too.
They are. Linear gravel paths, lined with upright nice pavers. And where there are ramps up to the grave islands, there are also nice stairs as an alternative, making them accessible.
Nice touch.
There's even a green nice stair leading up to a viewing platform built into the motorway noise barrier nearby, symbolizing that connection, maybe, between the cemetery and the everyday urban world outside.
So what's the overall feeling from this cemetery design?
The book really emphasizes the quality of the craftsmanship, the sustainability of the materials used, and the unique identity it creates through those details. The textures, the colors, the stone, the corten steel create this beautiful contrast with the plants in the sky.
Right. Let's travel now to Hungary. Two contrasting examples here. The Garden of Somogy, a private garden for rural tourism, and Erzsébet Square, a major public space in Budapest.
Okay, from rural tranquility to urban buzz.
Exactly. The Garden of Somogy near Banya was designed to feel homely for affluent guests, using plants that reflect the local landscape and symbolize the human-place connection.
So the planting is key here. What kind of things did they use?
A real variety near the guest house. Ornamental bushes, perennials, native species, herbs. The designer, Gabor Zux, also brought in symbolic trees,
Like what?
like English yew symbol of life and death framing the entrance, and European white elm, which is apparently an ancient sacred tree in Hungarian tradition used within the garden, adds that layer of cultural meaning.
Interesting. So the planting tells a story. What else is in the garden?
There's a traditional fruit garden on lower terraces, trees grown on cordon, and an enclosed outdoor lounge area with an open-air oven and a restored well. The whole aim was this vibrant but welcoming space, connecting guests to the countryside.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, turning our attention to Budapest, Erzsébet Square, a big urban open space created after some political debate and the stopping of a national theater construction, left this big concrete structure everyone called the National Whole.
Ah, yes. So they held a design competition to transform it.
They did. Furka Architecture Studio won with a design that created 6 distinct areas within this relatively small square, all linked by a strict geometric layout.
6 areas. What were they?
Spacious promenades, the terraces leading down into that underground cultural center, the Whole, an ornamental pool, an elevated leisure area, and a big central lawn with playful water jets.
Sounds complex, multi-layered for a small space. What about planting and water features?
Lots of planting. Maple and hackberry tree alleys, elevated plant boxes filled with shrubs and ground covers, perennial beds on resting terraces, clipped green walls, solitaire ornamental trees for focus points.
And the water.
The ornamental pool has a glass bottom, apparently, to enhance the effect down in the cultural center, and those lawn jets add a lively contrast to the calm grass. Given the square's prominence, materials must have been important, and probably expensive.
Absolutely. The book says the designers had quite a free hand with materials. They used high-quality stuff, hard limestone paving, polished limestone blocks for terraces, sandblasted and smooth glass for the elegant little buildings housing stairs and elevators.
Sounds very sleek, but it seems Erzsébet Square hasn't been without its issues.
That's true. The book mentions accessibility problems for disabled people. Lots of stairs, issues with the boardwalk design, and maintenance challenges too. Skateboarding damaged the limestone paving, a common urban issue again. And apparently some Croatian stone cladding used on retaining walls failed.
So it highlights those ongoing challenges of designing and maintaining popular city spaces for all sorts of users and activities. Things wear out, things get damaged.
Exactly.
Okay, for our penultimate stop, let's go to the Netherlands. 2 projects showing different approaches. The Quay on the River Ijssel in Doesburg, and the Portland Neighborhood Park in Albrandswoord.
Right. The Netherlands masters of water management.
Indeed. The Doesburg Quay was designed with a split level specifically for flood protection. Critical issue there.
And the concept sounds simple, directly related to the river. Low quay for boats, high quay for people to stroll along.
Yeah. This split level also apparently creates new views, new perspectives on the town's relationship with the river.
And how does this project fit into that long Dutch history of water management?
Well, traditionally, Dutch solutions were often purely technical, very engineered.
Dikes and dams.
But there's been a shift towards integrating these structures more thoughtfully into the landscape, the urban fabric. The Doesburg Quay is apparently one of the first projects where modern flood safety rules were combined with creating a new public quayside, really integrated into the town's public spaces.
Interesting evolution. So what are some key construction details?
The quay wall itself uses prefabricated concrete elements for the wall and the steps. Behind it is the theoretical dike profile, basically an earth body where you can't have foundations or trees. The wall between the high and low quays has a slight slope, and railings to stop it feeling like a fortress. The high quay is narrower, paved with black Dutch clinker bricks, and has gently sloping ramps for accessibility.
So what's the main takeaway from the Dosberg Quay? The book really emphasizes how well it responds to the scale of the landscape, the scale of the river. It aims for something recognizable, authentic, not just a technical fix, but something that tells the story of the town's relationship with the river.
Nice. Now let's look at the Portland Neighborhood Park in Ward, part of a new housing district. The goal here was creating valuable public space in a neighborhood that maybe lacked strong architectural features of its own.
So they looked elsewhere for inspiration.
Exactly. To the surrounding landscape, Rotterdam's urban sprawl, the scale of the docklands nearby, the farmland to the south,
And what's the park's main feature?
a 10-meter high hill, really eye-catching in the flat Dutch landscape. 10 meters, that would stand out. What are the details around this hill?
It has a triangular base defined by these high black concrete curbing blocks, which also provide a huge amount of informal seating. And there are steps, of course, so people can climb it.
What else is in the park?
There's a children's farm, oval layout, defined by a curb and fence, and the lighting is interesting. Primary lighting is limited just to the main bicycle path. Then they use accent lighting to highlight specific things at night,
And the materials?
a deliberate contrast. The hill itself is covered in green Hedera helix ivy.
Ah, so a green mound.
Yeah, contrasting with the neutral, light-colored gravel used elsewhere, the whole park is conceived as this strong spatial framework, well-organized but still informal, offering a generous scale compared to the little private gardens in the housing nearby.
Right. Okay, finally, let's travel to Spain. The Jardí Botànic de Barcelona, the JBB.
Ah, Barcelona, known for great public space design.
Exactly. This new botanical garden is highlighted as a prime example. Innovative planting, really sensitive to the site's topography.
And the planting approach is unusual, isn't it? Not the standard taxonomic layout.
Right. Instead of grouping plants by family, they group them by their origin in worldwide Mediterranean climate regions, divided into 71 phytoepisodes.
Phytoepisodes, artificial reconstructions of plant communities.
Yeah, and the spatial strategy is based on this triangulation grid, like surveyors use. That grid informs the path system, the planting plots, allows for flexibility, adaptation on what was a really challenging site.
Challenging how?
Well, parts of it were a former rubbish dump, uneven soil, landfill up to 20 meters deep in places.
Wow. So standard foundations were out.
Pretty much. They couldn't rely on rigid foundations,
Yeah.
so they used reinforced earth walls, compacted soil held together with steel mats. These don't need foundations and can handle some ground movement.
Clever solution. And visually.
These walls are clad in Corten steel. That rusty-looking steel creates a really striking color contrast with the pale concrete used elsewhere. And the path network, you said it followed the grid.
It's based on a grid, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hierarchical system, follows the topography, subdivides the planting plots, offers visitors lots of different routes, different botanical experiences. The book calls it a labyrinth without a center.
Intriguing.
Apparently, the final layout of the paths was actually decided on site, walking the ground, to best adapt to the slopes and get the desired sort of fractal effect.
And the planting itself, within those phytoepisodes.
They selected representative, dominant species for each region, distributed them according to ecological succession, so tree communities on the perimeter, more brushwood towards the center, and they carefully prepared the soil to create the different conditions needed by the various plant groups.
So what's the overall design philosophy underpinning the JBB?
The book really emphasizes its inventive spatial organization, its contemporary design language, the rational detailing. It deliberately avoids that traditional, maybe overly fussy garden-esque approach.
Aiming for something else.
Yeah, aiming for a sense of rendering, maybe, rather than strict representation, and creating this kind of interesting tension between the plants and the infrastructure, the walls, the paths.
It's been quite a journey across Europe, hasn't it? Digging into these fascinating landscape architecture details. What are some of the key insights that really stand out to you?
What's remarkable, I think, is just the sheer diversity of approaches we've seen.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
in Copenhagen, it was that really thoughtful blend of history and modernity,
For,
using recycled materials, reflecting changing urban values.
right.
Dublin showed us material innovation, but also those real-world challenges of urban management and maintenance. France gave us that strong commitment to ecological integration right from the start of the project.
Yeah, the service station.
Germany offered examples of both ecological principles in huge parks and that successful mix of contemporary design with historical echoes in the Riem cemetery.
Very different scales, same attention to detail.
Exactly. Hungary highlighted using cultural symbolism to create atmosphere in both rural and urban settings. The Netherlands gave us those pragmatic yet still artistic solutions to big issues like flood protection and creating community hubs.
Yeah, the quay and the Park Hill.
And Spain, with the JBB, presented this really inventive spatial organization driven by ecological thinking on a really difficult site.
It's so clear that these seemingly small details, the paving, the walls, the planting choices, they really do reveal layers of history, culture, and a heck of a lot of innovative problem solving.
Absolutely. And hopefully you, our listener, will now look at those everyday landscape elements, the pavement under your feet, the benches, the walls, with maybe a newfound appreciation for the thought, the artistry that goes into them.
So for your aha moment today, we really encourage you. Consider the details you encounter in your own surroundings. Next time you're out in a park, a plaza, a street, just ask yourself why. Why this material? Why this shape? What story might it be trying to tell?
And maybe for a final provocative thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
The ground beneath our feet, the objects that furnish our public spaces, they aren't passive. They tell stories.
Yeah.
So what stories are the landscapes around you telling? And what details might you have overlooked until now? Perhaps this deep dive will inspire you to look closer or maybe even explore some of these projects we talked about or just dig deeper into landscape architecture detailing generally.